Somebody wake the computer up. It's time to get to work.
Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, welcome back to my video game review series. So those of you who have been following my channel recently will know that I've been reviewing several Marvel games lately. In my last video I did a pretty long, in-depth review for Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which is a personal childhood favourite of mine. In the aftermath of that review, I received quite a few requests to review the sequel, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, and I fully intend to do that soon. I managed to pick up a copy of the game recently, so stay tuned for that. However, in the meantime, just to keep the channel going until then, I figured I would take a look at this game, and right off the bat this is going to be a much shorter review than my last one, since this game isn't a particularly complex one. Today we're going to be looking at Spider-Man Friend or Foe, released in 2007, developed by Next Level Games. Before I go any further, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button since it really helps me, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Long-time subscribers of mine will know that I made a Spider-Man review series a few years ago, where I reviewed several games in the series. And I think it's fair to say that the quality of Spider-Man games from this era and before were relatively consistent in quality. You had the excellent PS1 games, the first one being a classic in my opinion. You had the licensed games from the Sam Raimi movies, which I also reviewed. I personally enjoyed all of those. And you also had several spin-off games such as Ultimate Spider-Man, all of which had qualities of their own. Point being, the overall quality of the Spider-Man game series was always consistent. However, this game, Friend or Foe, was one that always eluded me over the years for whatever reason. And although having it in my collection for a while, I only got around to playing it for the first time very recently. With it coming out in 2007, it's very clear that the game was made to capitalise on the popularity of the Raimi movies. And as you'll see soon enough, many of the character designs and concepts in this game are clearly based on those movies. Despite being visually based on the movies however, the game's story has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Rather, the game is an original story taking place in the wider Marvel Comics universe. The game is a third-person action-adventure beat-em-up with some light platforming mechanics. The game supports drop-in 2-player co-op, so another player can drop in at any time and play as the sidekick, while the primary player takes control of Spider-Man. As far as the game's story goes, it begins with a pretty awesome cutscene where Spider-Man is chilling out in New York, before coming under attack from a bunch of villains from his rogues gallery.
Doc Ock and Green Goblin. Feels like a family reunion. If my family were comprised of lunatics!
With him also being backed up by New Goblin on his Sky Stick from Spider-Man 3. It's interesting because one of the attackers is Green Goblin, and you don't get any awkward dialogue between Norman and Harry. The game just kinda wants you to accept this despite it not making much sense. I suppose it doesn't really matter, since this isn't a particularly story-driven game, but I digress. While fending them off, the whole group comes under attack from a swarm of symbiote-esque creatures called phantoms. So yeah, this is another symbiote invasion plot, which kinda became a cliche of the Spider-Man games back in the day. Spidey's villains all get kidnapped and taken away by the phantoms, and right before Spidey himself gets captured, he's rescued in the nick of time by S.H.I.E.L.D. and their helicarrier.
Hello?
When arriving on the helicarrier, Spidey meets Nick Fury, who explains that the meteor that brought the black suit to Earth had broken up into multiple pieces that landed all across Earth. A mysterious villain has located the shards and is using them to breed an army of phantoms to take over the world. Naturally, this means that Spidey will have to traverse the world and find the remaining shards before they fall into the wrong hands. It's a very basic, very simple, and if truth be told, pretty lackluster plot that I personally didn't find that engaging at all. But let's be honest, this isn't really the kind of game that you play for the story, is it? The game is basically split up into two modes. You have the main levels, which are purely combat based, and the shield helicarrier, which acts as your base of operations to chill out between missions, basically a mini hub world. More on that later. How the main levels work is you take Spidey into a level, and he gets to take one sidekick with him. During gameplay you can switch between Spidey and the sidekick and control each of them at any time. As far as the sidekicks go, they were actually the game's main selling point on release, because not only do you have a whole bunch of superheroes to unlock, but even a whole bunch of villains. Many of the villains from Spidey's Rogues Gallery can be unlocked here. When you start the game off you have two sidekicks available. These are Prowler and Silver Sable, both of which are shield agents. You unlock the rest one at a time as the game goes on, and they're usually introduced with some sort of cutscene.
You think you're pretty sneaky, don't you?
I was, yeah. Oh boy.
For example, you can unlock Black Cat, Iron Fist, and even Blade. By completing the game you can even unlock New Goblin, who as I mentioned before was in the game's intro. As far as the villains you can unlock, these are a bit more interesting. All of them will first need to be defeated in a boss battle to unlock, with the exception of Lizard, who you just randomly come across examining plants for some reason. This means you must traverse each level and fight your way towards the boss to unlock them as a sidekick. These characters are Green Goblin, Lizard, Rhino, Scorpion, Sandman, Dr. Octopus, and of course Venom. I was actually really excited about the game for this very reason, getting to play as a bunch of Spidey villains alongside him. Unfortunately I found this to be a pretty underwhelming experience. I'll explain why soon enough. As far as the overall gameplay goes, as I mentioned before, it's an action-adventure beat-em-up. And like all beat-em-ups, it's a bit repetitive, but unfortunately, unlike the best beat-em-ups, this one is incredibly repetitive. It's one of those games where once you've played the first few levels, you've basically seen everything the game has to offer, aside from the visual aesthetics of levels, but from a gameplay perspective, nothing really changes the whole game. You enter a level which is entirely linear, defeat waves and waves and waves and waves of the same 4 or so enemies, which you fight the entire game by the way, and this gets old very quickly. One of the things that made Marvel Ultimate Alliance so good was the abundance of enemy variety. That game had so many different enemy types, many of which had resistances and vulnerabilities of their own, as well as their own attacks and stuff, with so much variety. In this game you literally fight the same enemies over and over, and even when the game does appear to give you a new enemy, it's usually just a reskinned version of the previous ones. You basically fight phantoms the entire game. You have smaller, quicker ones that swarm your position, and larger, more durable ones that take longer to bring down. You can usually wait for them to open up their guard to do more damage to them, particularly with long-ranged attacks. I did like how the levels do have some destructible environments, as well as numerous items to pick up and throw at enemies, so kudos there. Unfortunately though, you might notice that there isn't really much challenge in the game. You can use basic melee attacks to take out most enemies, and even use web attacks as Spidey, which is basically overpowered. You can throw just about any enemy in the game off ledges and take them out immediately, and even ragdoll them around the level with your webs. The game is made even easier when you unlock some of the more powerful sidekicks. For example, you can use Scorpion's tail laser to wipe out pretty much every enemy on screen. Rhino can just bash his way past enemies. And playing as Venom, I found that I could just grab a hold of any enemy in the game and ragdoll them. Long story short, the combat of this game is incredibly easy, and I mean mind-numbingly easy. Making the combat even easier is the inclusion of useful coloured items. Orange ones make your melee attacks significantly stronger. Red ones fill up your health bar. Green ones give you invincibility for a short time. And perhaps the best of all, you have these blue tokens. These allow you to perform a pretty badass hero strike that immediately wipes out all enemies on screen at once. This even works on the larger, more durable enemies. These look different for every character, and they're actually really cool to look at. But again, it makes the game way too easy, and takes away any semblance of challenge that it might have otherwise had. To the game's credit, there is a bit of level and location variety, at least in terms of the visual aesthetic of the levels. For example, you travel to Tokyo, Oscorp, Tangaroa Island, Cairo, Egypt, Transylvania, and even the mountains of Tibet. These all look great for the most part and have a very comic book-esque look. Unfortunately, the gameplay holds the levels back from being as fun as they possibly could be. At a predetermined point in the game, Spidey will discover the black suit, and for the rest of the game until the end he will wear it throughout the remaining levels. This does happen quite near the end though. As far as I can tell, it doesn't really make much of a difference to the combat or gameplay, and it just appears to be a cosmetic change. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, I couldn't tell a difference if there was one. In addition to the regular combat, as I mentioned before, the game has boss battles, quite a few of them actually. And these are pretty easy, just like the rest of the game, but to be fair, they do their bit to add some variety. My personal favourite was probably the Venom boss, since that was a little bit more interesting than the others in my opinion. As fun as the boss battles are though, they're really nothing special, and the fact that they break up the monotony of the rest of the game probably makes them seem a bit better than they actually are. Again, you will need to defeat the bosses in order to unlock them as a playable character. You usually get a cutscene introducing them, and an outro cutscene after you defeat them. It can be quite funny seeing the villains just automatically team up with Spidey as soon as the fight is over and the mind control is broken. They just seem to forget all about being villains and realise that it's necessary for them to join him.
Don't want to fight?
Doc, you were wreaking havoc until I broke the amulet controlling your mind.
Someone took control of my mind? Unacceptable.
Want to help me find out who it was?
I most certainly would.
I suppose I'm asking for a little bit too much if I'm expecting top tier writing for a game like this. It just isn't really necessary. That's pretty much all the game has to offer in terms of gameplay. Thankfully, if you do happen to enjoy it, then the game does have a bit of replay value. The game has a pretty simple leveling up system. As you defeat enemies and complete main levels, you'll unlock experience points. These points can be used in the SHIELD helicarrier to upgrade both Spidey himself and even all your sidekicks individually. You can upgrade their basic stats and even unlock new attacks for them. In addition to regular upgrades, you can also upgrade Spidey's web attacks. Many of these upgrades do more damage to enemies, such as explosive webs or poison webs, making the game even easier. Again, if you did happen to enjoy the levels, then it could be fun to replay them with all your character upgrades. The game also has several collectables to find. For one, you can find keys. These can be taken to one of the secret arenas hidden in the levels, and used to unlock them. Once you unlock an arena, you will be tasked with clearing out all the enemies within. Once you do this, you will unlock the arena for the game's 2-player versus mode. So if you do have a friend to play with, you will probably enjoy this mode. In addition to these collectibles, there are also helixes hidden around the game. These unlock bonus features, which there are quite a lot of in this game. For example, you get a bio for each of the game's characters, as well as some concept art to look at and stuff like that. You can also replay the mission briefing from here. Features like this are always appreciated by me. Another feature you get is the ability to switch between the black suit and the regular suit at any time in the helicarrier, and take it to the levels. Again, this doesn't appear to be anything other than a cosmetic change, but it is what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and I don't really have anything else to say about this game. It's a very short, very repetitive, and if truth be told, very disappointing beat 'em up that I don't see myself revisiting anytime soon. The graphics and presentation are pretty nice, and the soundtrack is okay. And again, I did like the idea of playing as a whole bunch of Spider-Man villains, but the novelty wore off pretty quickly in my opinion. I can imagine it would be quite fun in 2-player, but then again you could say that about any game really. I give Spider-Man friend or foe. A disappointing 4 out of 10, just a lackluster experience. Thanks for watching guys, I still enjoyed checking out this game in spite of my criticisms of it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did then please remember to hit the like button since it really helps the channel. And feel free to subscribe for more videos just like this one. Stay tuned for more retrospective video game reviews. I'm hoping to get the Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 review out pretty soon, so yeah, stay tuned for that. As well as many more reviews in the near future. Thanks for watching and God bless.
Go home, take your girl out to dinner, enjoy yourself. You earned it.